Griselda San Martin is a Spanish documentary photographer and filmmaker currently based in New York, but joining us tonight from Barcelona. Thank you so much for staying up for this, Griselda. Griselda focuses on issues of immigration, deportation, inequality, and human rights. Her current focus is on the growing Hispanic community in the United States and the socio-political implications of reactionary narratives depicting immigrants and ethnic minorities. Her work challenges assumptions about immigrants and explores the transnational life and practices that link individuals, families, and social networks across political boundaries. Her projects have been exhibited internationally and featured in the Washington Post, the New York Times, the New Republic, to name a few. Again, thank you very much, Griselda, for joining us. And the floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me, Lori. Okay, so I'm going to share screen. Please let me know if you can't see, or also if I go too fast, or okay.
I will be here for you.
Okay, so here, are you able to see my screen now? I'm going to go full screen. Okay. Okay, well, I usually like to, well, first of all, thanks to everyone who is listening to me now, and thank you for taking time to come to this Zoom meeting. So I'm going to tell you about my border work tonight. Usually I like to start this presentation by explaining why I do this work, or why the way I focus on these subjects, and why it's a little bit different from perhaps other photographers. So if you Google border wall or border, the word border, this is an image that you get if you go to Google if you do a Google search, you get images that look a little bit like this. So the border wall is usually presented to us in this way. It's like a huge, a powerful monument. It's a symbol of power. It's aggressive. It's dramatic. It's you always see normally pictured in a very sunny day with a lot of contrast between the shadows and the lights. And if you, in the same way when you Google borderland, or yes, exactly, the border territory, it's you get this visual representation that it's also always a dangerous place, like controlled by the drug lords or the drug cartels. It's like always presented as a war zone. And in the same way, if you do a search, or if you try to picture what an immigrant is by just listening or watching the news, these are also the images that you get. People crossing the border, jumping the fence, or people being arrested, or just hordes of people walking from Central America to the US. Well, of course, I'm talking about the U.S. Mexico border here. When you're able to see their faces, it's normally in a very dramatic way, like in this picture down right. And so it's usually, basically, it falls into two categories: the immigrant portrayed as a criminal, or the immigrant portrayed as a victim. My work is, I'm trying to basically challenge these stereotypes, or these visual representations of the border and immigration, because I'm trying to challenge this dominant narrative. The border is always explained or shown to us in a logic of territories. So territories separated by borders. So separating those who belong and those who don't belong. And always the media coverage is usually simplistic and sensationalist. And I don't want to, don't get me wrong, I think those type of images are very important. The danger is the constant repetition of this type of images. If you don't see anything other than that, there is a risk that you think that that's all it is. So in my opinion, we need a new conceptualization of the border. Instead of talking of territories, I think we need to talk about spaces of belonging that supersede national boundaries, that go across borders. And we also need we need a more humanizing coverage of the immigrant experience. So these are my goals, to challenge these negative stereotypes and provide an alternative imagery. So that's what I'm trying to do with this project, to show the border and the wall in a very different way. At the same time, and this is something I haven't listed here, a very important part of my goals or my objectives is to empower immigrants, to show them that they matter, that it's not that they belong or don't belong, it's they matter. So that's another, not only immigrants and their allies, so they can demand their rights. So now I'm going to show you the project that I called The Wall. It's a project that it's shot, and it's about a very, very small place called Friendship Park. It's not about the whole wall. It's just it's the only officially established binational meeting place along the U.S. Mexico border, and it's a place where families meet on both sides to spend time and to share intimate moments. This work it's a series of photographs. I have one short film that I'll invite you to watch. It's on my website. And well, a very important part of this is the exhibition, the work being exhibited in physical spaces and screened, the film. And I'm working on another film right now. So this is a map of the border. The Friendship Park is located on the most occidental, the most western side of the wall, next to the next to the ocean. So this is a closer satellite image of it, and this round thing you see, it's bullfighting ring. So you have an idea of the dimension of this place. It's very small. And this is what the place looks like on a weekend, because this area is only open on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays for a few hours. And when I say it's open on the weekends, I mean that on the US side of the wall, which is the other side, not the side that you're seeing, all these images are taken from the Mexico side of the wall. On the other side, there is a second fence, and the border patrol is controlling how many people are allowed into this area. On this side that you see, Mexico side, there is no police, there's no control, so you can go any time of the week, day or night. But since the other side is closed, the family members can only access this area on the weekends. And so for some families, this is the only way that they can see each other in real life. I mean, other than through, technology, the internet, social media, this is the only option they have to meet. And so I was photographing this place for about 2 years, because sometimes it was very difficult on a weekend. On a Saturday, maybe nothing happened. Sometimes a lot of things happened. Depending on the weather, sometimes I would just stay there and speak with them, not take a single photo. It took me a long time to just have a series of photographs, but I guess it was very intense, because I spoke with all these families, and well, actually not all of them. Some of the photos taken from far away, it was just to show them what the place looked like, the ambience. But for example, in this photo, Rosario is visiting her daughter and grandson, and they meet in this place every weekend. She lives in Tijuana and they live in San Diego. So they just lived across the border from each other, very close, but they are not able to be together. This is in this picture, I want to show how small the holes are. They're so small that they can only touch fingertips. And those are just family meetings. It's just a normal day that a family would go to the park and spend the day at the park. They come to Friendship Park and they spend a few hours here. If it's the summer and it's very hot, they bring sometimes I remember days that it was very, very hot and sunny, and those people would bring their umbrellas and chairs to sit. In this photo, Alejandra is visiting with her husband. They were separated. They are now together. They reunited. He's a U.S. citizen, but he was on probation and he could not leave the U.S. and she wasn't able to cross she was in Mexico. She wasn't able to cross. And besides these meetings, I also photographed other events that were taking place in this place. This is probably the most difficult thing I photographed in my life. It's an event called Opening the Door of Hope, in which the Border Patrol and the Border Angels, which is a nonprofit organization that helps migrants, they organized this event to allow a few pre-selected families to meet for 3 minutes each. So they would open a small door built into the wall and they would allow each family to hug for 3 minutes and then next family. So I believe it was 5 or 6 families that day. And they've done this 5 or 6 times since the border was built, since the wall was built. And it was very difficult. I was shaking, and everyone, all the journalists there, we were all crying. It was very difficult to focus. And this is a couple that they are both in Mexico. They don't meet with their family in Friendship Park, but they wanted to be photographed in their wedding photo shoot at this place because it's very symbolic for them, because all their family is on the other side in San Diego. Same, this is another not strictly a meeting, but it's this little girl, her grandma has a story with the border, crossing the border. Her siblings were born in the US, not her. I try to expand a little bit and photograph families and events related to this place. This, for example, is a binational demonstration where farm workers were protesting against low wages. And on this side is farm workers from San Quintin in Baja California. On the other side is farm workers from California. Also because of the symbolism of the place. And this is a religious gathering that happens every Sunday on both sides, and it's in Spanish and English. So I like to explain a little bit my visual decisions for this project, because it's not really like a classic reportage. It's more a series of photographs, and I decided to, for example, I decided to not include any photograph taken from the US side of the wall, because I spent time on the other side of the wall, on the US side. All these photos that you've seen are from Mexico, but I wanted to reverse the typical us versus them, when us is the US and them is Mexico. I wanted to reverse it, so I took all the photos from Mexico. To me, it was also important to include portraits besides the photographs of people meeting that you can only see their backs, because I think it's important to show faces. Even though I have the stories and the names, I wanted to include some portraits. I thought it was very important. And then this is funny because now this is a word we use a lot, social distance. But when I was trying to find a distance to take the photos, basically I didn't want to be too far away, so the people would be small and faceless. And I, at the same time, I didn't want to be too close, to be intruding. I didn't want to make it dramatic. I wanted to respect, to show some respect. And so I decided on a distance that would just be in the middle. Perspective the same. I'm taking, most of the photos are frontal, and I'm looking, it's an eyesight, so I'm not looking down or looking up. If I was looking up, the wall would show like the picture I showed you at the beginning, more monumental. In my photos, the wall is just a backdrop. What's important is the human interactions. So the framing, again, it's what I just said. The wall kind of disappears a little bit, and it's the people that's important. Again, the lighting, I was trying to take the images with natural light, unless it was very, very sunny and contrasty. And sometimes I used flash just to basically counterbalance this dramatization. But most of the images are natural light. And colors, to me, it was very important to have. I never shoot black and white, but in this case, the use of colors, and the more colors, the better, to again challenge or to contrast the typical representations of the border as a dark and dangerous and ugly place. So I wanted it to be beautiful. And this, I just included this image here after this description, so you can see a little bit what I mean. So the wall is the backdrop. What's important here is the family. It's a family photo. So the whole, they are all dressed up, and the people on the US side of the wall, the man is meeting for the first time with his daughter, who is the third from the right on the Mexico side, the one with the stripes, with a shirt with stripes, black and white. And this is the first time they met since she was a baby. And the whole family, it was a beautiful event. I mean, even though it was, they were separated by metal bars. And this was fortuitous, but they were all wearing all these beautiful colors, and the day wasn't so too sunny, so it doesn't look dramatic. So this exemplifies a little bit what I just explained, the visual decisions. And I do have like I was telling you, a short film. It's about Jose, who is pictured in this photo here, and it's his story. He's in Tijuana. He was deported from the U.S. after living and working in California for many years. It's a very short film, 6 minutes, and I invite you to go to my website and you can watch it. And well, this is it. And I don't know if you have any questions. Or one thing that many people ask me is, why do you explain so much why you do what you do like this? But I think it's important. I think this body of work is meant to be exhibited in a physical space. So when I do an online presentation, it's very difficult to appreciate the images the way you would in a gallery or in a museum, because I think these images are why I photograph these images. I want them to be complicated, to have many layers. So I wish I could just have one photo on the screen for 10 minutes, but then it would be like super long presentation. But this is the idea. I want to produce or to create images that make people think, and not simple images that make you question why this is happening. Why are we treating immigrants this way? Why is there a border? Is it, do we need a border? I'm trying to, this work is not pretended to it's not addressed to people who think like me, or I want to address both audiences, like whatever the opinions are on why on if there we need a wall or not. So, but this is why I explain maybe too much my visual decisions, because the idea is that you stay in front of the picture and you spend time with it, but it's impossible to do in an online presentation. That's why so.
Thank you, Griselda. I don't think that I could spend more time looking at the images online. I'm just saying. And I also watched the film before we started tonight, and I hope you all take a minute to watch that film. It's so touching, and so I think that the questions that you brought up, it's why are we doing this to one another? Why did we erect this wall? And we know that there are national and supposed political reasons to do such a thing, but it's an amazing way to develop a conversation around questioning the existence of a wall, knowing that there's so much love on both sides, and showing that there's so much love on both sides in a really extraordinary way. So I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I, for one, really appreciate you going through the visual decisions in a photo talk, because I think it's really important for photographers to learn about the visual decisions that photographers make for the meaning of their work. And so I really also appreciate that. Thank you. I'd like to know if maybe we can, I don't know, I feel like I want to keep looking at pictures, but I also want to see if there's anybody out there that would like to ask questions. I love this portrait. This portrait is endless. Are there more like this?
La family portrait like this is the only one I selected. I have many, but not all of them made the cut. I think this one is, I have several portraits, but family portraits, this is probably the one that I think it's most descriptive of, because this is it's like an ordinary thing, but it's extraordinary at the same time. And you know, everyone is posing with different attitudes, and I think this is this is one of my favorites.
Mhm. So we have a hand raised. Is it Catrice? Is that you?
Yeah, it's me. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I had a question. Thank you for sharing your work with us. I was wondering, do you know much of the backstory for the 3-minute meetings with the family? Like, did the Mexican government make that a policy? Did the American government make that a policy? And do you know why it's only 3 minutes long?
Oh, you mean this photo, the one that they are, this one?
Yeah, I was curious if you had like any back information on how that even came to be and why it's only 3 minutes.
That I don't know. It was, the whole event was 20 minutes.
Okay.
So I honestly don't know why 3 minutes, because
Okay.
it felt like 3 seconds. I mean, the moment they started hugging, they were crying, and it was very emotional. 3 minutes felt like nothing. And talking to the families, what they said is that it may be only 3 minutes, but for them was so much, like so important. Those 3 minutes were like so much. But I don't know. I know it's the border patrol and sorry, border patrol and border angels. And
Okay.
this was once a year for 3 years, I think, on Children's Day, which I believe it's someday in May. I don't remember. Mexican Children's Day, I think, and or end of April. But and I know that they did a screening of all the families to see if everything was fine. And the reason why they stopped doing this is because on the last time that they did it, which was, I believe, 2018, there was one family that the guy had been accused of drug smuggling or something that they said they didn't know, but basically they chose the families, and they allowed those families to participate. I know I was speaking with a woman who was on a bus for 36 hours thinking that she was gonna be able to be part of it. She didn't know that there was a list of families you had to apply to be part of it. They had to screen you and approve you. And she was on a bus for 36 hours from, I can't remember which state in Mexico, to be able to see her daughter, and she wasn't able to.
Thank you for sharing.
That feels like madness.
This is honestly the most difficult thing for me that I have photographed so far. And you cannot see, of course, but it was packed. Like, we were maybe, I don't know, 50 photographers and videographers, and we were very close to the action. On the U.S. side, the media was far from the families, but on the Mexican side, we were very close, and we were looking at each other like, this is too much. I was, my hands were shaking. I couldn't focus. It was hard.
I have one question. Michelle put in Dia de los Niños is June 13th. Nope, she says April 13th. June 13th for the US, April 30th for the Mexican side.
Yeah, that was April 30th. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Griselda. This is Stephanie. Thank you so much for your incredible incredibly important work. I'm always curious to know how photographers approach strangers, and if you have any advice on gaining strangers' trust to be photographed.
Well, in this particular project, I actually, in most of my work, I talk to people. I have to talk to people before photographing. I like to explain what I'm doing. Like I was explaining you why I was doing the work. I explain them the same. Well, not exactly the same, not the visual decisions, but what my goals are and what I'm trying to say or to express with this. And if they, and I always say, if you don't want to be photographed, that's fine. I just think your story is very important and I would love to include you in my work, but that's fine. And most of the people that I approached in this place, they were willing to be photographed and happy to be able to explain or to tell me their stories, because these are people that are most of the times ignored and they feel like nobody cares. So when someone, you know, in an honest way, just talks to them, just talking to them. But to me, it's so much easier when I speak with the people. Now with the coronavirus, I was trying to work and I was trying to document the situation in New York, and at the beginning going out, it was so hard because I was covered with the mask and the gloves, and to me that was so unnatural. To me, the most easiest thing to me is to go and talk to the people and tell them what I'm doing. This is my project and I'm very excited about doing this and I think it's so important and I want to photograph you. And people are like, no, but I'm not important. Why? No, yes, you are important and I want to photograph you. So in general, I get people accept. And of course, there's been cases where people have told me, no, please don't, or I don't want to, or just in case I prefer not to, and that's fine. It's totally, I mean, I totally understand why people don't want to be sometimes part of it.
Where, this is from Esther Etty, where do you show your powerful work?
Excuse me, where do I
Where
show?
do you show your work? Where is this work shown?
And this has been published in several places and also exhibited in also several places, galleries, museums, also universities. I really like to, when I'm invited to universities and colleges to speak, I think it's very important because that's the people that can make changes in the future. So that's and the film has been, well, the film was originally published in the New York Times Lens blog, and from there that was the first time I did a short film, so I wasn't really sure. My goal was make it something short, so that was my goal, the New York Times. So I knew it could not be very long. That's why I decided to make it 6 minutes long, and I had hours and hours of footage, but I knew I wanted it to be short and straight to the point. And after it was published in the New York Times, I got very good comments, and people were very, I got excited, and I started sending it to film festivals, and it's been screened all over the place, like the U.S., Europe, even Japan. I have screenshots of the film with Japanese subtitles. So that became my goal too. Maybe Jose, the protagonist, could not cross the border into the US, but his story, I would help his story to cross all borders, not just the U.S. Mexico border, but all borders. So I started sending it to many festivals And to my surprise at the beginning, it was accepted in many. So that was also nice. I would send pictures to his daughter. It was a beautiful experience.
That kind of leads me to a question on, I mean, you're encountering so many people and so many stories, and it sounds like that you keep up and try to stay connected, and also you connect the dots between the Mexican family and the stateside family, the United States families. And I was just wondering how much that is part of this project, is to continue to stay in touch and follow their stories.
Actually, I mean, obviously not all of them, but I do, like Alejandra and Daniel, the couple that I was telling you that they are now together. Last time I went to Tijuana, I met with them, and I took the same photo, a photo in the same place, but now it's all together with their 2 kids, and that was beautiful. And yeah, some of the families like Rosario, and the portrait that I was telling, that the lady was visiting her daughter and grandson. I've spent time with the daughter in San Diego. Some of the families I keep up with, and actually the other video that I'm working on, the other short film, is about one of these families.
Yeah, because I feel like time is such an important character in the stories, because, you know, like Jose hadn't seen his daughter, hasn't held her for 18 years, or, you know, I mean, the time between parents being able to touch their children, I mean, that kind of longer term narrative, it's just so sad, and so and it's so frustrating to learn, and so I feel like that's an important aspect, possibly.
Yeah. Yes, it's I guess it's the difference between, I mean, now that with the virus and everything, that people have to stay away from their families and not being able to touch. This is the same thing, but for years. So they haven't been able to hug for 20 years. So can you imagine? It's like, it's heartbreaking.
I'd
So
love to
yeah,
hear
of
some
course,
more
right.
questions. I'm also interested in, while we wait for more questions, if you wanted to talk a little bit about, I like how you are starting to connect communities in New York and Mexico. And I don't know if you want to just talk a little bit about your current work on the connecting the communities.
Yeah, I've been working on a project for the past 5 or 6 years. I don't know anymore. It's a long-term project, and it's so in New York, more than 50% of Mexican immigrants in New York are from a state in Mexico called Puebla. So I became interested in why is everyone from Puebla here? Because I lived in Mexico, I know Mexico well, and I was surprised. Like everyone I met, I would ask, "Oh, where are you from?" Puebla. Okay, so I think this is a project here. So I started documenting everything or anything related to um, their traditions, and how they would replicate traditions that they had in their homeland, in their home country in New York. So dances and religious celebrations like quinceañera parties. And then I was like, okay, so I think it's time to just go there and see what these places look like. And because it's interesting how there are some villages, there's some towns that are basically empty, and everyone is in the US, or these houses that are huge, that are built with the money that the migrants send with the remittances, but they're empty because they're in the US, they're in New York. And once they had children in New York, it's very difficult for them to go back to Mexico because there are no opportunities. This is a very rural, I'm talking about rural towns in central Mexico. It's not maybe northern Mexico or it's Mexico City. There is absolutely nothing, no work, nothing. And it's very poor, basically agriculture and yeah, I mean, rural communities. So, but it was really nice to, because they are so friendly and so I keep going and I don't know when I'm gonna finish this project. It's going to be a book that I know. And I'm also working on a film about, again, one of these families that is the family members in Mexico, family members in the US, and how they interconnect. That I've been working with a Mexican photographer friend of mine, and we've been working on it for about 2 years, more than 2 years now. So, but yeah, I'm interested in all these connections, and it's what I was a little bit what I was trying to explain earlier. It's not about borders and territories. It's more about these spaces of belonging. In this case, this connection between Puebla and New York. It's a space of belonging. It doesn't have to. The border doesn't stop people in New York to have these celebrations that are exactly the same as they are in Puebla. And same, the border here in this project, the border is not going to stop people from being together, even if they can't be physically together. So.
Okay, I'm asking all the questions, but please raise your hand or jump in, anybody, and mute yourself. But I have another question, and it's technical. So making still images and film in this very dynamic situation, I know it's difficult for me to do that, to have both. Do you dedicate like one day to film, one day to stills? How do you juggle that? Because your film work is really, really beautiful and very focused, and it doesn't feel like you're distracted by maybe taking the still camera with you.
No, it's impossible. I have tried and it doesn't work. It's just impossible. The way I look at, or the way I think of a photo, especially in this project where the photos are very thought, it has nothing to do with the moving image. And I tried, actually, this picture that is now on screen, I was shooting video. My idea was to do photography of the event. But when I saw what was going on, I was like, no, I need to have footage of, I need video of this. And I remember, so again, it was very difficult because I didn't have a tripod and my hands were shaking a lot. But more or less I was able to get some footage. And then I thought, oh, I need a photo. So I stopped filming and I took the photo, and that was the worst decision. No, it's impossible. It's the way you think, or the way I think of film and video and still image is completely different. So I can't do it at the same time. One day I do one thing, another day I do another thing. I learned by making mistakes, but yeah.
I empathize. I empathize with that. Yeah.
I think if you do both wrong. You can do both right.
I have a question. I'm just curious to know, because you're saying your work focuses on immigrants, but it seems like it's mostly Mexican immigrants, and like I know New York is such a plethora for all sorts of immigrants. So I'm just curious a little bit about the focus, if New York led you to Tijuana, or if Tijuana led you to New York, and and just the kind of that chain of events?
So before living in New York, I was in Colorado. I did my master's in journalism in Colorado, in Boulder. And the final project that I did took me to Tijuana. So Tijuana is before New York. And I was fascinated with the border culture and everything that was going on in that city. And I spent and I started going back there. And I did several projects in Tijuana. And then I moved to New York. And that's when I started focusing on the Mexican, but not only Mexican. I also did a project on the Garifuna community. It's Afro-Latinos from Central America, Honduras, Salvador, Belize, and Nicaragua, and Guatemala. Actually, Hispanic immigrants. I've done more work with Mexicans, but I focus on the Hispanic community. And that's mostly because my language is Spanish, so I can communicate well, and that helps a lot. And I understand. I think when you're not part of the community, it's very important to be an expert, or to know as much as you can, to learn, to study. I'm not an insider. Do you know the insider-outsider debate? I'm an immigrant, but I cannot relate to what undocumented immigrants are going through. I'm a documented immigrant, and I don't have all these hardships, so everything is easier, and that allows me to do this work. Otherwise, I would not be able to do this work at the same time. But I think it's very important to know everything, like the law. I mean, I studied so much about the immigrant law, and I need to know what I'm talking about, because I'm not going through the same thing. I think that's important. I think I would not be able to get the same type of images if I was not able to speak the language. Like I cannot imagine doing this work with Chinese immigrants in New York, I don't know, maybe it's because I want to control everything and know everything that's going on, and be able to also, I think it's easy. I know the culture well, so I know the food. I know that they love that I eat a lot when I'm with them, these kind of things help a lot. So yeah, it's not Mexican only, it's more Hispanic. My focus is on the Hispanic immigrant community. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, it does. Thank you.
I can't hear you, Lori.
Fred wrote a comment that says empathy makes that connection with your community. He can see your empathy in your photographs.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for tonight?
Yes, I have one. Very interesting presentation. And I wonder if we can go back a little bit to what you said about shooting stills and shooting video. Talk about your process, how you decide which is more appropriate in a given situation, and then how you proceed.
I think it's very specific of the situation. I don't know how to give you an answer in more general terms like this. Mm-hmm. I invite you to watch the video, and you'll understand why that story had to be done in video. It has an audio component that cannot be captured in a still image, in that particular case. It depends on I would say that with a photo essay or a reportage, you can talk about a subject more, perhaps like in a bigger or more in depth. Not in depth. I don't know. I don't think in depth is the word, but with video, I think it's well, the way I do it is I have a project and I do a series of photos, either a reportage or a photo essay, and then I choose a specific character or a family in this case, and I do video to go more in detail with the story of this family or this character. And that I do it with all my projects. I don't know why, but at some point I find a person or a group of people that I need to explain in a different way. And that's more like a beginning, middle, end, like like an arc, like more like a film. But it's not that I have a rule on how to, this is going to be video, this is going to be still. It's when it happens that. So with the video that the other side, the video I was telling you about, I first took the photo. The photo of Jose is this photo, this one. And that same day, I think it was that same day, because another thing I didn't mention before is that I was there every weekend. So I knew many of the people because they usually go every weekend or every 2 weekends. So one time I saw this guy, Jose, and I don't want to tell you too much because I think it's important to watch the video without knowing too much. But he was, there was this audio component that it made me like basically decided that I wanted to go back and do a film about him and his the relationship with his daughter. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Oh, sure. And I am curious about the logistics. So when you decide it's time to do more photos or more video related to this project, do you stay on the U.S. side of the border or on the Mexican side among some of the friends you've made?
Mexico, always.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I know more people in Tijuana than San Diego. I do know people in San Diego, but it's cheaper and I like the food. It's mostly because the work I do is more in Tijuana than in San Diego. So it's not that easy to cross the border. It's easy to cross the border from the US to Mexico, but not from Mexico to the US. It takes hours and it's not fun. So I usually stay on the side that I'm working, which is the Mexico side.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I mean, I don't know right now with the situation right now, how long the wait is, but I've waited for like 6 hours to cross. And sometimes it's been easy. Sometimes they ask me a million questions because I have a European passport and I'm crossing on foot from Tijuana to San Diego. They don't understand. It's so yeah, no, I try to cross the less times the better. Like it's not a fun experience. I mean, it's very tiring, and there's people who cross every day for work.
Right.
But yeah, to answer your question, I stay in Mexico. It's also more I mean, it's cheaper. It's a lot cheaper. So if you're basically financing because this is a personal project, nobody asked, this is not an assignment. It's a project I created and I paid for it. So.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
Go ahead. Good. One more question.
I just wanted to thank you for your work and for sharing it. It's very powerful, very moving. I know at the beginning it was mentioned that you're halfway across, you're in Barcelona now?
I'm in Barcelona now, yes.
And how is Barcelona? How is it surviving? And how is your experience with COVID there? I know that we've all been sheltered in place and struggling, and I'm just curious what your corner of the world is like.
Oh, well, actually I live in New York. My family is from Barcelona. So I got here today's Thursday on
just recent, yeah.
Monday. Yeah, on Monday. It was not fun. Like the trip was intense. The plane was packed. There was no social distancing. It was kind of scary. I'm getting the test done tomorrow just in case.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel well, but who knows?
Well, good luck for you. And thank you for sharing your work. It's quite powerful.
Thank you so much.
I hope that we can connect when you get back to the States. It was really, really great to meet you online, and really feel very honored that you shared your work with us tonight. Thank you very much, Griselda.
Thank you for inviting me and for listening.
Get a good night's sleep. And everybody watch that lovely video about Jose. That's an order. It's so nice. And next week we have India Beale, who's going to be presenting her work. And so I hope to see you come back next week. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Cheers. Thank you guys for
Good night, Griselda.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Buena suerte.
Gracias. Bye-bye.
Mhm.
Well done.